Hi YouTube, this is Joe Calton with Calton Cutlery, and visit me on the web, caltoncutlery.com. Okay, so the last video I talked about these little shadow pivots. Hang on a second. These little shadow pivots on slip joint pocket knives. This right here is my my custom slip joint pocket knife from... Wyatt was yawning back there. He must be bored already. This is my custom slip joint pocket knife by Jeremy McCullen of McCullen Knives, and he did a great job on it. And this knife right here usually sits at my my desk for opening mail and stuff. But anyways, he's got shadow pivots right here, right? These shadow pivots, they are an excellent compromise between full-on bolsters and, you know, just a straight peened pin. Okay, not that there's anything wrong with either way. I mean, there's pluses and minuses to each construction method. This way is extremely light and extremely simple, quite a bit faster to make. This right here is, you know, nice and classy, quite a bit stronger, but, you know, it takes an awful lot longer to make them, and it adds weight and bulk. So the shadow pivot is kind of a cross, or, you know, in between. Works really good when you're making nice lightweight folders with stable yet somewhat soft scales slash sides, whatever you want to call them. Okay, so this knife right here doesn't have liners. Okay, so it's just straight up micarta. All right, so I say soft as in, so micarta and G10 and things like that are softer than brass. Brass, of course, is softer than steel. Anything softer than micarta, like wood, I'm not too sure that I would do wood, bone, stag, horn, things like that. I think I would go ahead and use this type of method. I think it would work out pretty good. Anyways, here's how we make one of these. Now, the way that I've seen this done on YouTube, and there's only a couple of videos out there, the guys have a fixturing plate, and they'll take their scales. This is the toggle release pair. There's two of them that I'm working on. That's why I've got this stuff out. I'm going to do them. They take their scales, you know, once they have their liners attached and everything, if they're going to use liners, they take that scale and they mount it to a fixture plate for their milling machine. And then they indicate off, you know, you have to indicate because it's got to be a pretty precise deal. And they just use a milling cutter and cut that pocket blind without any sort of guide as to what's going into the hole. When the first couple of times I made one of these shadow pivots, I didn't have a mill yet. I want to say I had the lathe, but I did not have a mill. Well, if you don't have a mill, trying to do a precise, you know, line that up and then move it over and then move it over and get it completely lined up on a drill press, even with a drill press vise, probably not going to happen, right? So I had a drill press and I had a lathe, and I needed a way to be able to cut those pockets. So what we have here, these are countersinks, D-reamers, you know, whatever you want to call them. I use these for cutting the pocket on Corby bolts. Okay, so that right there is a complete match for this Corby bolt. And Corby bolts, you know, you bolt knife handles together with. Usually like big choppers, things that might take you know, impact and they need a little bit extra grab. Well, I want to say I got these from Jant's knife making supply, and I want to say when I needed this, they didn't have them in the right size that I needed. Now they might have changed that. They might have them in the right size now, and in which case, you know, go ahead and grab those. These have also been modified. This section right here, the pilot section, when I bought these, was about that long. Okay, so what you do is you shorten the thing down so that you can just, you know, run it down to the top of your drill press table, and that way you don't have to drill, come up, look, drill, come up, come look, you know, and, you know, try to make it to get the right depth. So anyway, so like I said, I had a lathe, and a drill press. I had the material that I wanted to make the little shadow pivots out of. I needed a way to put it all together, and I saw these little bitty countersinks or D-reamers, right? Well, if you look at that D-reamer, there ain't really nothing to it. I mean, it's, you know, the outside diameter of whatever you need, the inside diameter of whatever you need, and then a sharp shoulder right there, and then you grind the thing off. So, if you want to make 1/4 inch shadow pivots, you're going to need your 1/4 inch bar stock to make your 1/4 inch shadow pivot washers out of. Now I made these on the lathe. Pretty much you chuck up your bar stock, you come in with you know I can't remember the name of it at the moment, but it's a really short, really stiff drill bit just to start a hole. Then you go ahead and you drill the inside of this with whatever, you know, your inside diameter hole is going to be. I use 3/32. You drill a 3/32 inch hole down a ways, you pull it out, and then you come up and you cut them off, and then that's what you get. I used the parting tool to cut these off, so there's a little bit of a lip right in there. You could also, you know, drill your hole and then come over with a hacksaw and just, you know, cut them, but then they won't be, you know, like square. Anyways, now once it's time to make the pocket for that, you just make yourself a D-reamer or a countersink bit, whatever size you need. Okay, we've got this really cool stuff called drill rod. This is from Jantz also. You ought to be able to zoom in on that anyways. So the drill rod comes in all different kind of sizes, okay? So when you order up your stock for whatever you want to make your shadow pivots out of, order up some drill rod the same size, okay? This stuff comes, I want to say it's kind of like a, I mean it's not hard, because I was able to machine it, but it's also not like dead soft either. Yeah, it's I wouldn't call it a full anneal. It's pretty soft for 01, but you got to remember 01 is to brass like brass is to micarta or G10. Okay, it's quite a bit harder even if it's fully annealed. So you grab yourself a piece of drill rod. Now, if you have a lathe, then honestly you don't really need me to tell you how to make one of these. Okay, if you don't have a lathe, do it on a drill press, or find a buddy that's got a lathe, or take it to a machine shop and say, hey, this is what I need. Pay them the 50 bucks to make it, or however much it's going to cost, right? So you can see this one right here. This is a 5/16 one, along with matching shadow pivots. Pretty much you chuck this up on the lathe, and then you turn you square off the face of it, turn the very end of it down to your whatever your pivot pin stock size is going to be. Okay, in this case it's 3/32. Once you got a nice sharp, you know, corner turned like this, pull the thing out, grind half of it off. That's all there is to it, really. I mean, you grind half of it off, and it doesn't even really matter if it's, I would go to exactly half or maybe slightly undersized, and I'll show you why here in a minute. And then I don't even think I harden these, because that's still the surface finish. That's still the surface finish that that came off of the drill rod there. You know, so you don't even have to harden the dang things, because again, the only time that you're going to be cutting these pockets is in a handle material that is soft enough that you want to put the shadow pivot in for strength anyways, right? Okay, so now I'm going to show you how we install them. And we'll just do it on a piece of scrap. So this time we're going to use the 1/4 inch one. So we're going to need that piece of 1/4 inch, and we're going to need one of our shadow pivots here. Actually, we're going to do one of these. Not sure if that's stainless or mild steel, because I'm going to need 2, 4. I'm going to need all. Actually, I might have to make some more to be able to finish this project. Okay, so again, the end of that 3/32 should fit inside the shadow pivot. Okay? All right, let's go over to the drill press, and that's the great thing about this. As soon as you make that tool, now there's no mill required. Anytime you want to put a shadow pivot in, all you need is your drill press, as long as you've made up a couple of the things to begin with. Okay, so yeah, that's all we're going to need. Also, check this out. So the other day, I needed something to be able to raise, to support the end of a piece of stock I was working on, and that's just a car jack. Now you throw a magnet on top of it, bam. Of course, the plate on that my GoPro is mounted on is steel also. Okay, so we have got a piece of, just a scrap piece of 1/8 inch micarta. Okay, so let's go ahead and there's our 3/32 hole. Now micarta is a little on the when you drill it, you get kind of burrs, and it kind of tends to be undersized, which is okay for our application. So let's go ahead and take that burr off the back. This is just a sanding plate with some sandpaper. Okay, now we are going to need our custom-made reamer. Okay, we're going to tighten that down. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put a steel plate down on the face of my my table here. The reason for that, you can tell I didn't used to use steel plates. I just drilled down until I hit the table of the drill press, and now it's all kind of messed up. So you throw your plate down like that. You guys see that? Brush it off. See what the dogs are barking at. That's just the trash guys. Okay, now we got our 3/32 hole right there. Now, look at the depth of the end of that. Okay, so see how far that center piece is sticking down? Okay, well, even if we drill down to hit this steel, it won't go completely through, and it'll leave us a shelf that's about 1/16 of an inch deep. Okay, that's very important, because like I said, you don't want to drill down and then come up and look, see how far you went, and then drill down, come up, see how far you went. I mean, if you're going to build the dang thing to begin with, build it so that all you got to do is slap that thing up there, run it down till it stops, pull it up, and it's perfect. Okay, all right, so let's go. Now this takes a little bit of pressure to get it to cut, because this really isn't I mean, it's not an angled cutting surface, like a drill bit is. It's not angled like there at the tip, so it's much more of a reamer than it is a drill bit type of deal. Okay, so it does cut a little bit slow, and it does take quite a bit of pressure, and sometimes there's a little bit of smoke. Okay, so you just line it up. There, quit cutting. Pull it up. Shut your machine off. Bam. Pocket. Okay, let's get you back over here to the light. Now, that pocket is cut perfectly. Okay, there is a consistent 1/16 of an inch, from the bottom of the hole, or a bottom of the shelf to the bottom of the, the bottom of the material. Okay, so that gives you a nice shelf for your shadow pivot to sit in. Now we take one of our shadow pivots. If you have, if you're making them with a lathe and a parting tool, and so you have that big old nasty lip on the end there, you can just sand that off with you know, sandpaper on the surface plate. Now, remember how I said it was best to actually make it the cutter a little bit on the underside, undersize side of things? Okay, now you get that shadow pivot started, right? Now you take yourself a steel block. Now you can put some super glue in there if you want to. My choice right now is this Gorilla super glue. You know, I had this stuff kind of sitting on the shelf. I couldn't find like Loctite super glue, and then one day one of my wife's chickens stuck her head through like a piece of wire, like a wire fence, and when she pulled her head back out, it must have caught, a piece of that wire caught the side of her scalp and laid her scalp open. I mean, she looked like my geometry teacher from high school, Mr. Stafford. He was Italian. He was really proud of that fact, and he had a comb over. And so, I mean, that's what it looked like. I mean, the whole top of her head peeled off. Well, you know, it was 7 o'clock on a Friday night. You know, the vet was closed, the only vet in town that works on chickens. And so, so I said, well, you know, she's close to the shop. Let's give her some shop first aid. So I brought her out here. I should have clipped the feathers, you know, around the outside of the skin, so I could see what I was doing, but I didn't. So I ended up having my wife hold the chicken, and then I used this super glue to dribble around the sides of the cut, and then put the flap back over and held it there. Now this stuff, it's got a little bit longer of a set time, you know, so like regular super glue, like Loctite or Crazy Glue, you put a drop on there, put your fingers together, and they're stuck, right? This stuff, you can put a drop, you know, and you can kind of move it around a little bit, and then, about a minute or two later, then all of a sudden it's stuck, but it's stuck quite a bit harder. So that's a really good glue to use. You could put a drop of that in the bottom of this pin, or shadow pivot hole. Take yourself a hammer and just gently tap it in. You can hear the change when it bottoms out, and bam, that's what you get. Oh. It's sitting there and they're nice and flush. Now, when you make these things, you know, when you make these things right here, I told you, when you're making them on the lathe, you chuck this up in, I've got a collet holder, a set of collet holders. That way you don't have to worry about dialing in like a 4-jaw or using a 3-jaw or anything. So that way, you know, you just loosen it, and there's a cam, you loosen it up, you put it in, you tighten it down, do your machining, loosen it up, feed more, away you go. But a 3/32 drill bit has a lot of flex in it, okay? So even though you start that hole with that short little, you know, thing in your tailstock, you know, to get it going, as that drill bit's going through, it's going to tend to want to walk a little bit, okay? So these holes might not be perfectly centered. So then what you do is you re-drill it. Oh, there went my reamer. It didn't break, so that's cool. This is just our 3/32 drill bit. That's a little bit too close. So now the hole in your liners, the accurate side, because you don't know if this is precisely in the center or not, but you know that hole right there is your pivot pin hole, okay? So now very gently here, okay? Even if you super glue it, if your drill bit isn't sharp, okay, or if it catches, all right, or if you produce too much heat, that heat will break the super glue bond, and then your shadow pivot will start flopping around in there, Okay, which is another reason why it's good to make that reamer a little on the underside so that this is kind of a compressed type fit. All right, so then you just go ahead and drill through the backside. That must have been mighty dang close because I didn't feel hardly any resistance at all. Okay, now you know that hole is perfectly centered. Now if it's off a little bit, you know, to one side or another, you know, somewhere not perfectly centered, it really doesn't matter, because you're going to countersink this, and then you're going to peen the head of that pin in, and that peening process is going to fill it in. Now if you're using like the same material, so like a stainless steel shadow pivot and a stainless steel pin stock, then they'll completely, if you do it right, when you grind the head of this off, it will be completely seamless. You won't be able to see it. If you do like a brass shadow pivot and then a stainless or a nickel silver pin, then when you ream the face of that hole, it'll be pretty dang close. Okay, now I think we'll go ahead and take you off of here. Okay, so this, in a little bit better light, is what we just put in. Okay, now remember, it's a pressed fit. You can glue it in if you want to. This micarta and G10 have got kind of a springy nature. Okay, so when you drill it or you ream it, it'll kind of move out of the way, and then as soon as your drill bit or your reamer is removed, it kind of shrinks back up a little bit. So here, that's a good thing. We're using that property of the material to make it stronger. Okay. Then, this was a brass one I did just a little bit ago. You know, grind it flush, and then away you go. And you can see that that's pretty dang. I mean, I just hit it with a 120 belt on the 2x72 and then a 320 on the 1x42. You know, just to kind of give you an idea of how, you know, how close of a fit that it gets. And it's pretty dang good. I mean, I don't think. Yeah, ain't nobody gonna complain about that. I mean, that's a really nice tight fit. And then if you glued it in, that glue would, you know, fill in any. But there's not even. There might be a 1/2 thousandths gap on one portion of that, and that could have just been me being off when I hit it with the hammer. So anyway, so yeah, so now let me grab a piece of pin stock here. Oh, here's what it. So now instead of just peening that, oh, come on. Oh, you know what? I super glued the end of that pin. That's what it is. So anyway, so now what you get is, instead of just a peened pin, now where you just have the head of that pin, you know, holding the material together, now you peen this pin right here, and it locks this whole big chunk of surface area, you know, onto the, you know, the back side, and it holds quite a bit better. Sizing the things. You know, if you can make your own reamers, then you're not really stuck on, or, you know, have the reamer made if you got a buddy that's got a lathe, or you can do it on a drill press. I mean, you know, take your drill stock, okay, chuck it up in your drill chuck, okay. Now grab yourself a drill press vise, okay, something that's got, you know, hand crankable movements, okay, and then set it up, lock your drill or your file into that drill press vise, or if you don't have, or if a file won't cut it, you can take, make yourself a mount to mount like a, you know, an abrasive wheel on a Dremel tool, okay, and then set that up somehow to where you can move that, you know, back and forth in, and then, you know, as this is spinning, you know, this is spinning and grinding it. I mean, you're only grinding just a little bitty bit off the end of it. Okay, so and a drill press, you know, you're not really supposed to use a drill press to mill with because the bearings aren't set up like that. But for really light tool making like this, it's more than sufficient. And like I said, you don't even have to harden the things. So then once you can, you know, make your own reamers, then whatever size bar stock that you get to make your shadow pivots out of, you know, get the same size drill rod and, you know, make your own reamer. Now, if you do not have a lathe and you want to be making these little shadow pivots like this, okay, you don't have to make these on the lathe. If you don't have the lathe and you just got a drill press, then go ahead and, you know, drill your pocket like that, right? Cut off, say, you know, 2 inches of this pin stock. Make your pocket, put your super glue in there, put your chunk of pin stock in there, okay? Drive your chunk of pin stock in there. Now, once that super glue hardens, with a real sharp hacksaw or a bandsaw, go ahead and cut this off flush. Okay, that'll leave you something like this that just doesn't have a hole. Then turn the thing upside down, and with a very sharp drill bit, go ahead and go nice and slow, and don't overheat it because the heat will break that super glue bond. Then you can go ahead and drill through that disc, and then you don't have to worry about having a lathe to need to make the shadow pivots. If you're going to do it that way, I would definitely make sure you deal with a very soft stainless or brass, nickel, silver, copper, mocha-may, you know, make sure your Damascus is nicely annealed, anything like that. So I think that's about it. This, like I said, I've never seen a YouTube video, or I've never seen anybody else explain how these shadow pivots work. How to make the reamers for them. Like I said, I don't know. I mean, I came up with this about 6-7 years ago, something like that. So, you know, maybe they make these reamers, you know, 2 size already. And if they do, you know, drop a link down in the description, and then the next guy, he can just see that, and, you know, away he goes. And then you don't even have to make your own reamers. But these are pretty dang simple to make, and they seem to be working pretty good. And I think that's about it. Yeah. So let me know what you think in the comments. Try it out. See if it's simpler than the way that you're doing it. If you got a better way, hey, make a video. Let us know about it. Yeah. Again, this is Joe Calton with Calton Cutlery. And visit me on the web, caltoncutlery.com. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we will see you next time.